Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, what a day. It's actually hard to draw fast any conclusions, but I think the best coincidence of the day was actually the one which was mentioned at the beginning by my colleague, previous colleague, Commissioner Hogan, who mentioned that it's the last day of the milk quotas. So we have, in a way, symbolically turned our debate from inward-orientated to more outward-orientated. And I think that was felt from all the discussions which we have heard today. It is worth repeating some of the thoughts we have heard today from some of our distinguished speakers. Arun Gandhi, the problem today is not about growing more food, but how we distribute what we grow equitably, nutritious food, and how to eradicate poverty. The security and stability of any civilization depends on the security and stability of every individual. I'm a peace farmer, planting seeds of peace and hoping these seeds will germinate for a better world. Any program, business or activity that we are discussing here today will not succeed if half the global population is not part of the program. It's not benefited by the program. I urge people gathered at FFA discussing food production to think of how we can share the production of food with everyone, and how do we make it possible for those who can't afford to buy food to eat a decent meal, and it is only this way that we will be able to create peace. Or by Jeremy Rifkin, we are witnessing a new hybrid economy, part capitalistic market and part collaborative commons that will transform our economic life in the years ahead. We need to move agriculture away from a fossil fuel-based system into a sustainable post-carbon world. This will be good for business, good for environment, and also good for our children. He argued that there are three urgent changes that need to be made. We need to move away from chemical fertilizers to organic-based fertilizers and use subsidies to put land to fallow to allow soil to recover and transition. Farms need to be self-sustaining in energy, and they need to be supported to this through subsidies. Change diet, inefficiency of meat consumption. Why we are still subsidizing an unequated carbon-based agriculture? Let's change the subsidies and use subsidies to transition to an agriculture not based on fossil fuels. You can agree or disagree with what he was saying, but you have to agree that it was certainly thought-provoking and to a certain extent also very attractive. Or a keynote which was done by Amina Mohammed, European Union history in ensuring food security through agriculture is a story of domestic success, yet also a learning process about how to face the trade-offs between increased productivity, environmental sustainability, rural well-being, and the global externalities of domestic policies. This is the last generation that can do something meaningful on climate change. Promoting sustainable agriculture is integral to all sustainable development goals. Global partnership and collaboration are absolutely key. It's about creating a win-win situation for everyone so people don't feel that they are losing out. Finance is crucial, and we need to bring finance people on board and show they can make profit, but it must not be off the back of the people or of the planet. Then we went through 4 sessions. What we have heard in the session 4, Rethinking Global Food Security and Sustainable Agriculture from Europe to the World, we have heard that the EU has a responsibility to address food security, given the huge global challenge to end poverty and to reduce the estimated 11% of the world population facing chronic food insecurity. We have heard that that EU agribusiness cannot be economically sustainable if it's not environmentally sustainable, because these are two sides of the same coin. It is through trade that the EU is making a major contribution to global food security. The EU still needs to bridge the gap between sustainability-driven science and land-constrained production, or that the combination of demographic pressure and sustainable agriculture practices possesses the risk of a productive capacity breakdown in a growing number of ecosystems, as well as threatening biodiversity. That FAO believes that the international community must begin to look at possible solutions, including the improvement of the functioning and transparency of the market and an appropriate level of emergency stocks. This is all the more necessary as price volatility affects farmers cruelly and deeply, especially the poorest. Climate change, it's probably going to be the biggest challenge for food security, we have heard again. Also highlighted the serious effects that associated price volatility has on food security. So trade as a key component in reducing volatility, because trade makes it more necessary to set up the means to limit volatility. Urge the international community look at, among other things, improving the functioning and transparency of the market, ensuring an appropriate level emergency stocks. What we have heard in the session 2, how to reconcile ecosystem services and environmental risk management in agriculture. Farmers and landowners engaged in this reconciliation should lead the way. They can demonstrate that it's possible to be both economically viable as well as environmentally sustainable. The rationale behind the greening of the CAP is to use public funds to let farmers sustain and to reconcile them with the services that nature offers. We have also heard that the environmental impact of farming and the need for stringent rules and a radical change of behavior is, in that regard, it's necessary. In the session 3, innovation for jobs and growth through circular economy in agriculture, I've had the pleasure to listen to the whole of the session. We have heard that circular economy is an economy of permanence, that agriculture is the world's largest employer. In a holistic circular economy, farm incomes will be improved and stabilized as a natural capital will support productive and healthier ecosystems, will enable greater resilience to weather events. There is now significant evidence of the value of feedback systems with regard to yields and income. Agriculture and food are essential if one wants to redesign the system so as to reduce waste and improve food security. For closed-loop thinking in a circular economy, pointing at practical examples, it's really useful. Increasing the producer responsibility and the holistic production process are important incentives, and taxing resource efficiency and creating a circular economy, it's something which could help. We have heard a hard talk question that circular economy, it's logical, why the hell we need special conference on that? Dear friends, because logic is not always logical in our daily lives and in our policy making. And because we tend to be intelligent, but with many of us and our activities, we are still not really proving that in daily lives. We heard that circular economy is good for you because it's cost-benefit, whatever you name costs and however you look to the benefits. We have heard about carrots and sticks, and also about the fact that carrots for somebody can actually be sticks for another. And we have heard also about rats from different kind of perspective. Finally, in the session 4, which is still fresh in your mind, that's why I will not repeat a lot, it is clear that EU has defensive as well as offensive interest in TTIP negotiations on agriculture. Also in this regard, this negotiation is unique, as it deals more with regulations than with custom duties, and impacts more on the societal preferences on both sides of the Atlantic than ever before. Considering the leverage that agriculture has in, for example, in US Congress for the US President obtaining the necessary trade promotion authority or the so-called fast track is a challenge of a higher order. After the failure of past attempts such as the US-EU free trade area and the transatlantic marketplace, hopefully this time progress in transatlantic trade can be made, provided of course that more transparency can assure the concerns of the public, and these concerns are here and serious. Ladies and gentlemen, why we have put today's debate at the beginning in the SDGs context? There are basically few reasons. One reason is that because we are in transition and because it is fundamental that we understand that this is not transition we are alone facing in the European Union. It's a transition which is very much connected to the global challenges, to the fact that with the number which we are sharing this planet and with our economic activity in whatever sector, we are basically seriously interfering with the balance of the planet already. You have all heard the facts about that we are currently 7 billion and that we will soon be 9 billion. In fact, we have quite accommodated to that message. What is actually meaning? It's meaning that in one generation, we will have on the planet additionally more people than it was the total amount of population at the beginning of the 20th century, 100 years ago. 100 years ago was 1.5. In one generation, we will have more than 2 billion additionally. What does it mean? It means additional Germany in 1 year, or if you want, United States in 4 years. My own country in 9 days, in 6 hours. That's fast. That's how fast the things are going. We are also expecting, these are McKinsey assumptions, that till 2030, 3 billion of additional consumers will be lifted from poverty to the middle class consumption. All that has consequences. It has consequences in feeding all those people in a more sustainable way, also taking into account that we will have to address seriously the question of food waste, because if we are today altogether wasting 1/3 of our food which we are producing, basically we are wasting 1/3 of all energy, of all water, of all pesticides going for nothing, and all human energy which is put into production of that food. So it is a serious question. There are also other consequences which are emerging from the things which I'm telling you. One is that all economic sectors are basically in a serious transition, and we have heard that today clearly. Energy transition, mobility transition, housing transition. So obviously, also agricultural sector is inevitably part of that transition. When we talk about transition, we have to recognize that for any transition, it is extremely important that we create incentives. Currently, we have already incentives, but they are not used for the proper purposes. Money is there, but we have to redirect that money. And all the things which we are discussing today, taking into account the new changing reality, the new normal, as some are calling it, it's also for the purpose that we would create conditions in which also the farmers would in the future be still in the position of having good arguments to get that incentives. Incentives are crucial for the change. You cannot do any transition not taking on board anybody who is, by the way, hit by the transition which is happening. That's why it's so important that this is understood. We just want to create good reasons why we can continue. Next year, we will be already behind the agreement which will be reached in New York in September. So we will know more. Today, we have, through our debates, tried to contribute to the process. Next year, we will have to ask ourselves, are we up to the job? Are we prepared? Are we ready? Is it everything going like it should, that we would contribute our fair share to that global development? So, with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I would sincerely like to thank you that you have stayed with us the whole day, that you came again on our Forum for the Future of Agriculture. I would like to express my wish that next year you would again be with us. And finally, I would like to wish you all a safe way back home. Thank you.
Okay.